Hi, I'm Dr. AmberLyda. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and I practice in the state of Florida. I provide online psychotherapy and I thought I'd make a little video to help folks know if online psychotherapy might be a good fit for them. I think the first thing to think about is if you are comfortable with technology. I love technology. I love smartphones and fancy laptops, and I'm kind of a technophile. But I'm not particularly sophisticated with using it, and you don't need to be either. If you've ever used Skype before, this is easier than that. If instead you find yourself kind of nervous to try to check Facebook or use your email, online psychotherapy is not going to be a good fit for you. Uh, the work of therapy is hard enough without also feeling anxious about using the equipment. When you first use the software program, I use a HIPAA compliant software called VSEE. The loading is very, very easy, easier than I would have anticipated. But you can load it on your computer. There's a 24-hour support that can, and they're fantastic, that can check in with you to make sure that's working before you even try to log in with me for the first time. And in fact, I offer 15, 30-minute free consultations, and generally those are focused on figuring out if I'm a good fit for what your needs may be. But if you wanted to try it out on the video platform, we could do that so that you could also see if that particular mode of service delivery is a good fit for you. I think there are other practical considerations as well. I first became interested in online psychotherapy when I was working for a university providing psychotherapy to students there. And what we were finding was that after they graduated, we could no longer provide therapy for them. Many of them were moving anyway, so they wouldn't have been able to stay with us even if we had a private practice in the community. And it was sort of sad because they were doing very good work in their therapy, and many of them talked to me about feeling like they were going to need to start over with someone new. And if you've ever done therapy, you know that that can be a really difficult thing to do. And it also feels like you've invested so much work in this person getting to know you, which makes therapy go faster. And it can just be difficult to make yourself start with someone new. And so I had begun thinking way back then that it would be so helpful if, at least for some of them who it would be a good fit, we could have continued the work. Flash forward many, many years, I moved to South Florida, as you can see by the tropics behind me, and I was looking for my own therapist, and I was having difficulty finding someone nearby that was a good fit for me. I kept hearing this one person's name over and over again, and when I checked him out, he was too far for me to be able to commute. I was working 40 hours a week or more, and I was commuting almost 10 hours a week. I couldn't even imagine doing the hard work of therapy and having to drive even more to get there. Let's face it, we're not always excited about getting in therapy. It can be really hard work. Additional commuting time wasn't happening for me. So I contacted that therapist, and fortunately for me, he was willing to do the work online. So practically, that was really helpful for me. I had anticipated, actually, that it wouldn't be quite as good because it was going to be online. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why, for me, it ended up being much better than it would have been face-to-face. And that's just a personal thing. Some people are going to need it to be in the same physical space, and others might benefit from it being able to be online. In fact, since we're there, we might as well go there now. What I found was that it was really useful to be in a familiar space. So I was able to sit in my office in my house. I felt comfortable there. I was able to have my dog right next to me each session. I would come home from work and take off my shoes and get my favorite blanket, and I'd set up my little station, you know, Kleenex, because he was a really good therapist, bottle of water, and my dog, and I felt really ready to go. And in some strange ways, at least for me, it helped me generalize what I was gaining in therapy because I was already in my living space. So it wasn't like, oh, I can have these insights in my therapist's office, but then bringing it out into the real world is sort of another thing. If you've ever done therapy, you know that that can be really hard. It was already happening in my home, so it was easier for me. That's definitely not true for everyone. There are some practical limitations. I didn't have small kids running around. If you have small children who don't give you the privacy to go to the bathroom, it's going to be really difficult to have the privacy to do good online psychotherapy. So think through some practical issues like that. Some folks that I work with do therapy in their offices. That works out great for them. For other people, maybe their bosses don't let them stay in the office after hours, or maybe they don't have privacy when they're in the office. So just think through some practical limitations. I think technology is also something to be thinking about in terms of practical limitations. Almost every laptop, any PC that you get right now is going to have the capability to do online video conferencing, which is basically what this is. But Wi-Fi is another piece of the technology. If you have trouble streaming Netflix, this is my test. If you have trouble streaming Netflix, you're probably going to have trouble streaming the online video conferencing system. You don't want that in therapy. You don't want to be pouring your heart out and there to be pauses in my response to you. That doesn't feel good. So you want to make sure that your Wi-Fi streams well, and you don't have to do any fancy tests for this. You can put a YouTube video on your computer. If it streams fine, then this is probably going to stream fine too. And again, I'm happy to do a test with you in a little 15 to 20 minute consultation to see how well that works. Sometimes what I have noticed is that folks can have really great Wi-Fi, but if they have 6 people in the house and everybody's streaming something at the same time, that will slow it down. So that's another thing to think about. If you have privacy in your home, but you have older children who you know are going to be streaming really intensive games during your therapy hour, that's probably going to slow the internet down. So we can test that out, but just something to consider. One of the reasons that I think online therapy can be useful is that I really truly believe it's difficult to find a great match with a therapist. You're looking for a few things. You're looking to find if A, they can understand your problem in a way that lends itself to their psychotherapy technique. So you may or may not know that there are lots of different ways that people do therapy. Some people practice from a cognitive behavioral model or an interpersonal model, and there are dozens of models that people can work from. And some folks, I disagree with this, but some folks might say, well, let's say, for example, you have anxiety, then you should be using cognitive behavioral therapy. Sometimes you should, sometimes you shouldn't. So how would you even know that before you go to see the person? You haven't gotten your doctorate degree, probably, in psychotherapy. So how would you know if your problem was something that was going to work well with their treatment model? One thing that I really like to do is offer a very thorough assessment. One of my skill sets is that I'm good at recognizing not only what the presenting problem is, so anxiety, depression, whatever it might be, but also what are the causal agents that are creating it. Because really, the match is about what's causing the problem and what type of therapy resolves the cause. So anxiety is a symptom of a problem. It's pretty rude. Depression is a symptom of a problem. So until we know where that problem is coming from, perhaps it's biology or perhaps it's early childhood stuff, but until we know, it would be hard to know what match would be best for you. I know very well the sorts of psychotherapy that I'm good at and the sorts of that I'm not good at, and I'm more than happy to do the assessment and then to let you know, yeah, that's not a form of therapy that I am specialized in, but hey, I know somebody who is. Let me get you connected with that person, because match is that important. It's the most top 3 most important parts of psychotherapy, and it's important to get connected. And I guess that's one of the reasons that I ended up doing online work myself, was that I was having difficulty finding someone who could understand the root of what I wanted to work on and whose therapeutic model was a good fit for that particular issue. I think the other thing to think about in terms of fit is style. So there are lots of different people who do cognitive behavioral therapy, but their personal style may not be a good fit for you. If they're particularly blunt or harsh, maybe you love that, and maybe that's totally going to be a turnoff for you. So take advantage. Most folks will offer a little free consultation to get a sense of what that person is like and to see if that's going to be a good match for you. For me, that match was more important than whether I was in the physical space. But again, I'm really comfortable using technology, so you want to think these things through. It's important that not only is the treatment model a good match for your issues, but that the mode of service delivery is a good match for you. One of the things that I found in doing this work is that we have a lot of U.S. citizens who are living abroad, and it can be difficult for them to find native English speakers abroad who can do psychotherapy. So the way that licensing works with online psychotherapy in most states, it's a little bit different in some, but if you have specific questions about that, let me know and I'll answer them, is that you need to be licensed in the state where the potential client is living. So I can see anyone in Florida right now. I'm probably going to renew my license in North Carolina shortly. But in the rest of the states, generally, I wouldn't be able to provide online psychotherapy. So as you look for a clinician, the general advice is going to be to look for someone who's licensed in your state. If you're living abroad, it depends on where you live, what the particular regulations are. So as a Florida psychologist, I'm allowed by Florida statutes to provide psychotherapy abroad, depending on what the laws and regulations are in that country. So if you have questions about that, I'm happy to explore that with you. Or if you travel a lot, let's say you do live in the United States and you live in Florida or, in a few months in North Carolina, but you travel a lot, you're a pilot or you travel for other means of business, online psychotherapy allows you to consistently engage in psychotherapy, which we know is one of the predictors of success. So that might be another reason that it's a good fit for you. Let's see, what else might be important to consider? What you're coming to therapy for. So there are some issues that psychotherapy online is a brilliant fit for. Let's say, for example, you have agoraphobia, which means it's difficult to leave your home. This is a really good start to therapy. Now, what's kind of cool about that is, of course, the goal of psychotherapy is to get you out of the house. So we don't want to enable you staying there by allowing you to do psychotherapy there forever. So it might be that you take your mobile phone and, you do psychotherapy on your front porch for a little while, or then you take your car and you go a little farther in the neighborhood and you do psychotherapy there. It's a beautiful way to do graduated exposure in the direction that you're wanting to go. Virtually any issue that you can work on face-to-face could be worked on in online psychotherapy with some caveats. Because it's a newer way of delivering psychotherapy, right now, from an ethical point of view, I think most ethical and thoughtful psychologists are being fairly conservative about the level of risk that they're willing to manage in online psychotherapy. So specifically what I'm talking about here is if someone is acutely suicidal, online psychotherapy has some limitations. So if you were in my office suicidal, I would be able to get help here immediately. I'm in the same physical space with you. Online, that can be a little bit different. There are some workarounds, of course, and I think probably in the future we're going to be heading in a direction where that's less of an obstacle. But currently, if you're looking to do online work and someone's not asking you questions about risk, I would be a little bit concerned about how thoughtful they are in thinking things through ethically and legally. So they should be asking you about that. And we're thinking about scope of care when we think about those issues. So there are some cues that I can't pick up on online psychotherapy that I would definitely pick up in the office. For example, sometimes hygiene is predictive that someone is decompensating. I might not be able to pick that up online. So those are things that we think about. Related to that, and this is just a general piece of advice, I guess two pieces here really. Anytime that you're doing any sort of psychotherapy, you want to look up the credentials of your therapist, and they should be comfortable telling you what they are. So that they have a degree in the field and that they are licensed in the field. So that protects you as a consumer. if somebody's doing online work, I have mixed feelings about this. Online work is new enough that I think you have a couple of different types of people going into it. You have people who are frontiers people. You know, they're interested in doing new things and providing services in ways that meet the needs of clients, even if it's perhaps novel, like online work. But you also have people who perhaps aren't really thoughtful about what they're doing, and it's just particularly convenient for them to do it online, and so they're doing it, or they haven't really thought through the ethics or legal issues of it. So anytime there's something new, I think it's important to be attentive to the sort of person you're matching up with. And I think that's the case in any sort of new thing that you might consider doing that's sort of on the frontier. It's just check the person out a little bit that you might be working with to make sure that they're one of those folks who's really thought it through versus somebody who's just sort of throwing themselves in there. And a note about that, if you're already in therapy with somebody in a physical space and you're about to move, it's certainly something you could ask that person to see if they would continue working with you online. What I have found is that folks who are used to having a physical practice might not think through all of the iterations of things that they should about providing that work online. For example, how to make sure that it's as confidential as possible and secure as possible, how to write consent forms that take into consideration all of the extra pieces you need to think about in doing online work. So I'm happy to assist your therapist in figuring that out. It doesn't really do anything for me personally. I just think that it's useful if you can have some continuity in your care, if you like who you're working with, but maybe they're feeling like a little bit worried about doing it. I'm happy to provide some consultation to them about that. And it's not something that I charge for. I'm just excited actually to have other psychologists doing this work, because what I frequently find is, because match is so important to me, if I meet with someone and I know that I'm not the best match for them, I want to get them connected to somebody who is. So the more great therapists that I can get to do online work, the greater my referral list is, and the better chance I have at helping to match a potential client to a good therapist. And I think that that is mostly about how much I believe in the power of good therapy and how important it can be in people's lives. So to conclude this lengthy video that I had not intended to be this long, I hope that you'll get in therapy if that's helpful to you, and I hope that you'll get into the mode that's a best fit for you. If you think that this might be, I'm happy to talk with you further about that, whether or not you intend to work with me. It's something to think through, and to think through seriously. Psychotherapy can be incredibly powerful and life-changing if you get the right therapist and you get the right sort of treatment and you get the right match. So good luck to you in finding that. Feel free to send me any questions that you might have. Please do, though, consider, and here we go into online stuff, please do consider that email is not a confidential form of communication, and please do not put clinical material in your email. If you have some practical questions and you feel comfortable with the risks associated with unsecure electronic communication, that's fine. My email address is Dr.AmberLyda, AmberLyda, D as in dog, at itherapymail.com. Dr.AmberLyda at itherapymail.com with a period after the doctor. But if you want to talk about what clinical issues might be a good fit, or something a little bit more in depth, let's please do that by phone, or perhaps even on the platform if you want to try it out. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that was helpful. If you have other questions, let me know. I'll be making more videos in the future. Bye-bye.